Welcome to Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things, the podcast show. I am your host, Carrie Roberts, and today is another part of our Connected Conversation series. And I have with me my fellow co-hosts, Lee, Sonia, and Patty, as well as two special guests. I have Ramona, who has been a great friend of mine for about 10 years. So excited to have her here. She's coming in and calling in from California. Welcome, Ramona. And then I also have Dr. Benjamin Ritter. I've known Ben for about a couple years, and we've had a lot of conversations on this topic. So really excited to have him. He's calling in from Austin today, and he is safe. So we are glad to have you. Welcome, Ben.
Happy to be here.
So our topic today is about what it means to be an adult. And the reason I kind of brought these people on and we're having this conversation is it's something that I talk about with people all the time. You know, we're always questioning, are we kind of in the right place where we're supposed to be? So I want to start the conversation about what did you think as a young kid, or even as kind of like 18 to 22, what you thought you were supposed to do? What did it mean to be an adult? Did you think either you heard it from your parents, from society, from school? What was kind of your initial thought on what it meant to be an adult at a young age? And I will start with you, Lee, if you want to share.
Well, so I guess, was the first thing to think about is I got to get a job and support myself and find a place to live, make your payments. Of course, there was always, the biological clock hanging over your head. I should get married, have kids. So I don't know, it was always kind of like a timeline, but, maybe it was self-imposed, I don't know. So yeah, it was kind of daunting. Like when, I went to college and everything, and then you're trying to figure out, well, where am I going? Am I going to be able to, make my payments and still, save and enjoy my life and all of that. So it was, just learning to be responsible and trying to make sure that I could manage on my own, and not keep asking for help or, your parents to come in and save you from anything. It was just being able to do it on our own.
Yeah. Ben, what are your thoughts? Because I do think it's different for men in the sense that you don't have a biological clock ticking, but there are maybe other expectations that you have. What were you kind of thinking at a young age, what you thought it meant to be an adult?
I might also be a little odd man out here because when I was younger, I dedicated my life to wanting to be a professional athlete. So I didn't really care about anything else. I didn't really focus on anything else. That was actually why I'm at where I'm at today. So I didn't really think I'd have a full-time job. I didn't worry really about work because I always found a way to work and sustain myself and make money. But there was no long-term plan. It was, I'm going to be a professional athlete and this is how I'm going to get there. That was the plan. Now, I think around 2021, I realized that plan wasn't going to happen. And so it was more of a let's explore and just enjoy life because I kind of restricted my life for so long. Like meaning all I did was play soccer. Like I ate tuna out of a can. I really didn't have much of a life most would describe. So limited in that way.
Yeah, and that's a different thought as well. I just want to share, my dad is watching, which is always nice. Hey, Dad.
Hi, Carrie's dad.
A lot of insights for me as well. I'll just comment here since he's on. I would say, for me, the plus side is that my parents, I feel like they always told me, like, do something you're passionate about and you love, but also make enough money to support yourself. Because as Lee said, no one's going to support you, so it's like, it was that combination. There was never a pressure to be a certain thing, but do something you're excited about and you love, but also make sure you make enough money to support yourself. And so that was kind of like in my head. And I actually always was like, oh, career first, I'll have a family later. And didn't really give any thought of like when that would happen or whatever. And now being in my mid 30s, I was like, whoa, that went really fast. Of like, when you think like you're 10 years old and you move up. But that was always my focus of like, okay, I want to, do something I love. I want to own a business. I knew at 16, I wanted to own a dance studio. And I thought like, oh, that's going to be my life. And I'm just going to do it. And I didn't really have any other thoughts at all, but that was kind of my first thought. Patty, what was your thought as a kid? Anything to share here?
Well, I would say similar to others. It was just that whole notion of being responsible for yourself. What that looks like, what you're doing, how much you're making isn't so much it, but more that you're responsible for yourself. versus relying on others. I think to me, it was always also that it became a stage, if you will, that you're also responsible for yourself, but you're also, how I want to say, so giving to others, whether that's through your work and the type of work you do, whether that's through your community, but you're not just yourself, you're out there giving to others as well as being responsible for yourself.
Interesting. Ramona, what are your thoughts here?
Well, my experiences early on were very reflective of Benjamin's. As a kid, I really wanted to be Batwoman. I thought that that was probably a realistic career choice. I haven't found a way to monetize it yet. But yeah, as a kid, I thought adults were like these ultra competent people. Yeah.
Well, you think, like, I mean, you and I've talked about this, where you think like, oh, adults know everything.
Absolutely. No, and I was totally under that like assumption as a child. I was like, yeah, adults, they know what's going on. And of course, as a kid, my parents were very, they were trying to tell me how to become an adult, how to live my life. My dad always said, when you grow up, what you got to do is go to college, get a job, get married, have a kid, and then get that first divorce under your belt. And he actually said that to me.
That's funny.
And you were like, ooh, check. There's a path there as well.
Got it.
So
All right.
Ramona, you've got a friend watching here as well. So Sonja,
Hey,
your
girl.
thoughts here too. Anything different, anything similar from what we've said here?
Yeah, I mean, at 18, my parents were very strict. They were very strict with us. It was always, as long as you're living under my roof, you follow my rules. So to me, at 18, becoming an adult meant freedom. I couldn't wait to be out on my own. But, again, freedom requires responsibility. You're responsible for yourself, and you want to be independent. You have to be responsible for yourself. And then I got married at a very young age and had a baby at a very young age. So I wasn't just responsible for myself anymore. Now I was responsible for another human being. So yeah, I learned at a very young age that becoming an adult meant you had to be a responsible person.
Yes. So all, some similarities here, but actually more different than I thought it was going to be honest. And, I think one of the challenges when I've talked to kids, and I'm going to say like 18 to 22-year-olds, they're at the end of high school, beginning of college, end of college. And there's this stress of, I have to get into this school and I have to do this job and have everything planned out. And this kind of myth of, as Ramona said, oh, adults know everything. When the reality is half the time I'm like, I don't know, am I doing the right thing? Like, is this what I want to be doing? Am I doing it right? It's like, we don't know the answers to everything, and kind of learning that has been something that's been interesting for me. Ben, I want to go to you because one of the things you talk about personally and professionally is living for yourself. At what point for you did you kind of maybe shift from that athlete side or from just your career side and say, you know what, like maybe I don't need to go on this path that I thought I did, and I can kind of define adulthood maybe in a different way for myself?
Well, now I just had a new epiphany because I would like to become Batwoman. So I don't know, Ramona, if you want to team up, we can make this work. We can monetize it. I have some ideas.
I like this. We're all going to become superheroes. I'm on board.
At long last, my time has come.
No, so what really, this whole, that whole journey of me evolving from, my purpose is soccer to now my purpose is to be greater than my purpose and just to explore life and to really figure out how to redefine who I am and rebuild my confidence and my perspective on the world. It didn't turn into this new focus, because at least my takeaways from that experience of mine was that you don't really need a focus all the time. And I think, I mentor a lot of college students too, and a lot of high school students. And it's this idea of, I need to know what I'm going to do. I need to know who I'm going to be. And it's like, no, you don't. You have to have a general idea of what you're interested in and what you want to explore. And then you have to go explore it. Then you have to go take initiative and feel empowered to go explore it. Because so often, and I was at fault for this, we react to opportunities in our professional life. We're not like that in a lot of ways in our social life and personal life as much as we are in our professional life. We apply to the job that's available. We take the job that is provided to us. And so for me, it was really just not abiding by that at all and exploring. And I didn't really figure out what I wanted to do, I think, until I launched my company that I'm in now, because I ended up as a healthcare executive with a side hustling, coaching practice. And I got there because I was really just I had this like scarcity mentality with work. I went to grad school. Out of grad school, I was looking for a job for 2.5 years. I got a bunch of different contracts that were taken away due to federal funding. So it was this whole reacting and trying to find something led me to a place I didn't want to be. So it's not really an answer to your question. It's more of like kind of a story and pieces of bits of information, but I'll let it sit there.
Yeah, well, I agree. I think it's like there's so much in the journey and things change. I remember, like I said, for me, I wanted to own a dance studio. I was like, that's what I'm doing. And then like at 26, I opened it, I did it. And then I was like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. I was like, what now? Like, that was what I thought I was doing, like for my whole life. Like, what do I do now? And when I stopped, I knew I wanted to stop. But I remember my students saying to me, and Ramona actually had been gone from the state at that point, but they were like, well, what are you going to do now? Like kind of this like, and I knew they weren't being judgy, but I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm going to work on it, and kind of this pressure of having to figure out what that meant was stressful. It's like, okay, I know it's not this. I'm not sure what it is. And so it's kind of like exploring these different ideas, like you said, and just like testing and see what happens. Ramona, I'd love for you to talk to this a little bit because you were military and you're kind of going in this new path of potential career. Can you kind of talk about that journey, kind of how that's been, how that's going now?
Absolutely. So I have a funny habit of every 3 to 5 years completely resetting my life. It's kind of anxiety producing at first because as you establish yourself, you get these safety nets, and then you're like, screw these safety nets. We don't need these. These are lame. I recently graduated college, and I'm in my 30s, so fun. But I majored in business, and I learned a couple things in all of my business classes. I learned that all of business can be taught in about 2 days. I took 2 years to learn it for some reason. And I also learned that I don't like business. And I've had a little bit of experience in it. I've worked in an office. I've been on the board of directors for a nonprofit. It was really fun. It was. I had a really great time. The nonprofit is super dope. They got a cool mission, but that's not really for me. I'm actually trying to kind of change my direction again. I'm looking maybe something more into some type of social services type of work. I'm all over the place. Look, Carrie, I'm glad that you invited some actual adults to this talk. Because I don't know if you've noticed, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 video game posters in the background over here, and that's the bed I actually sleep in. So,
I think, we talked about this too, Ramona, because you've been in the military for a long time, and the military is like very segmented. This is what you're supposed to do. This is your rank. This is the next thing. And then when you're kind of coming to the end of that, it's like, okay, well, what now? I've been told what to do for so many years, and there's a freedom to that, as Lee mentioned earlier, but there's also a stress to that as well, I would imagine.
Absolutely. And college is the same way, because college is very, very regimented in a lot of ways. You have these paths that are put out in front of you. And then once you're done, you're like, well, where do I go now? Like you're like, oh, I have all the options. And then you're completely overwhelmed because you don't know which of those options to take. So yeah, I'm working on it.
Yes, I agree. I just want to share too, we have Jennifer listening. Hi, everyone. I'll have to touch this later, but go Bar Girl. Who's Bar Girl? Who is that?
I think that might be me.
Maybe it's that girl.
Something. So excited to be seeing Ramona. Ramona, you got some love here tonight.
Oh my God, Jane! Oh my God!
Inline Fitness, love you, Ramona. So Patty just retired, and as she's listening to us, I'd like to hear her thoughts as she's hearing the 3 younger ones here, and then Lee and Sonja are kind of in the middle there. Patty, as you hear us talk, like, is this stuff that you went through, have been through, or you kind of just, laughing at what we're saying? Like, what are your thoughts as you hear us talk about this?
Well, yeah, I love the conversation. I think from my experience, coming out of college, then it was looking for a job, and I think I've shared before, mine ended up where I thought I was going to go into teaching, and that didn't quite work out. And the guy I was dating at the time, his mother said, "We'll take the federal government test." I took the test and ended up in the federal government, and that was a wonderful career for me. It was kind of a great mission, but a great it really worked for me. But in the same way, it's I think people have to follow their path and follow their passion. And I'll share a story of my son who went to graduate school for Master of Fine Arts for poetry, which I used to say, if anybody sees a want ad for a poet, call me, because where that's going to go. But and his story of playing golf one time with a threesome, and there was, I don't know, like a psychologist, a businessman, or whatever, and they ended up asking him what his 5-year goal plan was, and where is he going? What are you going to do with a master's in poetry? And he said, well, my 5-year plan is to make par. Because they were playing golf. He has since, followed his passion, and he's published in poetry, but yet has a, kind of a teaching job as well. So, I think you don't know where the journey is going to go, but I think there's a big part of it where you've got to go where your heart leads you.
Yeah, I agree. Lee, do you want to share? Because you're coming close, you and Sonja, close to retirement, not there yet. But yeah, I mean, you've worked in sales for a long time for a pretty interesting company. Just, curious on your thoughts as you hear us talk, as you hear someone who's retired versus us who are kind of in the middle of it.
Yeah. Well, I'd say, I went through college, the 4-year degree, studied food science, and at the time when I graduated, there weren't a lot of jobs, and they were very low paying. And, I could have taken some of those jobs and starved, but I said, no, I'm not going to. And I waitressed, because I had to pay bills. So I took 2 waitress jobs, and I had people saying, what are you doing with your life? You got a degree and you're waitressing. And I'm like, well, I'm making money and I like it, and I'll figure it out. I even ended up, driving a truck for Frito-Lay for 2 months, thinking,
that sounds actually totally fun. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah. I drove a tractor trailer, and I thought,
I could so see that.
I was pretty badass. But yeah, and I was like, oh, well, this is kind of in the food industry. It wasn't really. It paid really well, but it was a really, really rough job. I wouldn't recommend that unless you really want to, have a job that's, you're driving a truck in January and February through snowstorms trying to deliver potato chips, which you think don't weigh anything. Well, they do when you have like 10 boxes of them in a hand cart. But anyway, I eventually did get a job in my industry, but I waited. It took a while. But then, I decided I wanted to travel, and I worked 2 years at that job, and then I quit my job. And I, took some time off. I traveled for 6 months, and really didn't know when or where I was going to get back to work. And the big worry back then was, oh my God, I have a gap in my resume. What am I going to say I did, But I felt like, I was getting life experience. But I think back then it was more frowned upon. I think now people embrace that kind of, experience, because, it's not all about following this, written path of 4-year degree, get a job and just work and, never experience other things. So I think it's changed a lot, and eventually I came back, and my company hired me back in sales. And so that's how I ended up getting into sales. So I closed the gap in my resume. But, I still think I learned so much when you talk about being an adult. I didn't have a lot of money. I wanted to, I went to Hawaii, I went to Asia, and I really wanted to stay away as long as I could afford. So I had to figure it out. And there were times where I didn't know where I was going to live the next day, but it was kind of exciting because I figured it out, and that's when you go, okay, I really have to rely on myself. I have to, there's nobody else here. I got to figure out, how I'm going to be able to live, my dream or whatever that is. So, I think it's really hard for, people to go through school and know exactly what they want to do and come out and go, hey, yeah, I'm going to get that job and get that job. Things change. And I think you have to make sure that, you're still, I always say, you might not find a job that you necessarily absolutely love, but you at least have to like it, or maybe you need to find a different path and just kind of be open to that. So I think we put a lot of stress on ourselves,
Yes. I can definitely vouch for that as well. Sometimes we put more stress on ourselves than other people do. Sonja, you had mentioned earlier, not only were you kind of managing this career piece, but you had a child very young. Can you talk a little bit about, managing your expectations of being an adult, especially at a young age, with kind of both of those factors?
Well, like Lee said, you can't always get the job that you love, but I got the job that I needed that paid the bills. I was always very responsible at a young age. And I've been at the same firm for many, many years. Never drove a tractor trailer.
Well, you might want to. So,
but
kind of fun and scary.
Just now, at this point in my life, am I starting to do the things that I've always wanted to do, like ballroom dancing. I took up a couple of years ago. I mean, it was something I always wanted to do and finally decided to do it. So I guess I put a lot of things on the back burner while raising my son and going through life and just working and little vacations here and there. But now at this point in my life, I'm really starting to do what I've always wanted to do.
Before we get on this call, Patty was telling me she was doing some research before the show, which I like. She was talking about how, there's different stages of adulthood and, kind of different maybe expectations or thoughts. And I think, when we're younger, we're kind of told like, okay, work hard, make money, save. And sometimes like that stuff, like you said, Sonja, the stuff you want to do is put on hold. I know I tend to be sometimes a little bit more that way and reminding myself like, no, it's important and okay to have fun too. That's equally as necessary to be doing those things. So, Patty, can you talk about what those three types of adulthood are and the difference and chat about that a bit?
Well, yeah, I think it was just more when Carrie brought up the whole topic is like, what's an adult? And it's like, all right, well, I'm going to look up the definition, what definition is it? What's it mean? And it does talk about young adult, middle-aged adult, and older adult. And so, I think so it was just the stereotypes, if you will, or expectations for those different stages. And so, we're talking about, with young adults, what does society expect out of it as a young adult? But there's also, what does society expect as a middle-aged adult? So I brought up this, do you buy a convertible or get divorced? Those are kind of those notions. And then with, the older adults and what does that look like? So as Sonja said, some of us, because we're both, in Lee and Carrie well, Carrie's not the older, but that neither is Lee, sorry. But,
don't wrap me into that.
To do some of the things that you weren't able financially or time or whatever reason why at a different stage, and to feel comfortable doing that. So we're we're dancing.
Yes, and Patty was saying earlier, she was like, she's like, just because you're a senior adult, 65 plus doesn't mean you're going on trips with a fanny pack. And I was hysterical because I was like, my grandparents do that, but they're 80 and 90, so it's okay. But
and fanny packs are really useful, by the way.
I said they're back in.
I actually wanted to start this company called Snacks and Fanny Packs, and it would have been basically like a monthly delivery service of fanny packs and snacks, which would have been, it sounds like my dream.
Ben, I'm so excited. So maybe we would go on trips if we had fanny packs and snacks. I don't know.
Yeah, and
stylish.
You get to pick your own style. You can upload photos. Come on, It'll be a thing. It'll customize them.
Benjamin, have you considered how people in the rave community might feel about this product?
Where do you think I got the idea?
Hell yeah!
I was at a festival. I had a fanny pack on, and I was like, I could use some snacks. I was like, wait.
That's how great ideas start. That's very true. Ben, do you have any thoughts on what Patty just said, kind of about the different stages of adulthood?
As everyone was talking, I was reflecting on myself, and if I could go back to my younger self, I think the one thing I would have really instilled would be confidence. And I think we have these stages of adulthood, and you could probably look at how they're different by what we're afraid of at each of those points in time. And what I would love people, if anyone's listening, is to say, like, what am I afraid of? What am I saying? I wish I could move to an island. Okay, well, you're not doing it. So what are you afraid of? Like, what is it about that? Or I wish I could travel for 3 months and quit my job. What are you afraid of? Let's examine that. And I think a lot of times as we get older, our fears change. So then we can start doing other things. And I think that's really interesting, because I always ask myself, like, what am I afraid of doing right now? What do I think I want to do? And do I really want to do that? And if so, why am I not doing it? Because we're the only people standing in the way of actually making a decision with our career in life.
Yeah, I think I told you this, Ben. I know I've told, I think the rest of you on this show, that I always wanted to live at the beach. And when I got divorced and I decided to move and kind of do whatever, my parents were, especially my mom, was like, so why don't you move to the beach? And I was like, is that allowed? Like, I thought that's what you do, like, when you're 65. Like, can I do that now? Like, is that something, like, I don't know why. Like, and my mom was like, what are you talking about? I was like, I don't know. I had this idea in my head that, like, you can only do that in retirement. And she was the one that was like, why don't we just look? Like, let's see what you can afford. And if you can, why not? And she was so right. And I live literally 1.5 miles from the beach, and I love it. Like, it's my home. It's so much of who I am. And so when you ask that question, Ben, and I think about, what was I afraid of? I don't think at that point it was afraid. It was kind of like, do I deserve this? Is this something that I should be getting at this stage in my life? Have I earned it? Was the question. Does that make sense? I don't know if anybody has had thoughts on that, or if anyone has something similar to what Ben is suggesting. Does anyone want to share?
I mean, I agree with you, Carrie. I mean, I've felt that way many times. Have I earned this? Do I deserve this? Have I worked hard enough for this? Maybe I shouldn't at this point. Maybe I should wait. So yeah, you did the right thing.
Oh yeah. Well, and when you do, it's like, and I know, Ben just recently moved, which was a huge move for him, to Austin. Ramona's had her own transition she's been going through. And I think, when we do those, it doesn't mean it's not hard or scary or challenging. But once we kind of go through it, we're like, oh no, this was the right thing. Like, Ben, did you feel that when you moved? Were you like, no, this is where I'm supposed to be now?
It was something I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And to Ramona's point about getting rid of safety nets, I was just so comfortable, and I didn't like that. I wanted a growth opportunity. I wanted a change of scenery. I wanted a new community. And at least comfort in terms of where I was living needed to change. And so that's why this move was I don't know if it's the right place, but it was the right decision.
Yeah, that's interesting. Lee, any thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of have our own, like, preconceived notions of what we can or can't do, or, and I think we, have to look at it and sometimes say, yeah, I want this, I deserve it, I can do it, so I'm gonna do it. Yeah. And just kind of ask yourself those questions. Sometimes maybe you can't, maybe I want a big mansion on the beach. Well, you know what? That's not really realistic, but what can I do? What can I do that's going to make me happy? And not always try and fit in some mold because you think society wants you to fit in that. Mm-hmm. That's what I feel sometimes holds us back. What are other people going to think, or what do they expect of me? Instead of, what can I do to make myself happy? I think also from a cultural perspective, because I grew up, I'm Chinese, and I grew up kind of, half foot in that and half foot in American society. And it was really hard because to me, the expectations of being an Asian child is, you should go to Harvard, or, go to Ivy League and be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, and that wasn't me. And it was kind of hard, to break out of that and feel okay with that, and not feel like the black sheep all the time, because that is a stereotype, but that doesn't mean everybody has to fit into something like that. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Ramona, you want to comment here?
Yeah, so if adulthood exists in stages, then it's also possible to take steps backwards in those stages. It definitely felt like I was an adult at a certain point. Like I got married and like had a house and whatnot and like a stable job. And I was like, here we are. This is what an adult is. I'm doing adult things right now. And then that went away. And yeah, for me, adulthood isn't really a stage thing. Like for me, an adult really doesn't feel like something that I am. Adultness feels like something I do. So like I feel like for me, being an adult is something I do in a moment, and then in the next moment, I'm not an adult anymore. If that makes
Can
any
you go
sense.
into that a little bit more? What do you mean? Give an example.
Yeah, so like there are times when I'm like, okay, look, I have got to get things in order today. I have got to pay my auto insurance bill, and I have got to open the mail and check my emails, which is kind of the same thing, but stressful in different ways. And so I do those things. I get myself ready. I make myself a nice cup of coffee. I make myself a list, and as soon as I'm done with that list, I'm like, all right, done with that whole adult stuff for the day. and that's kind of the way that I think a lot of people feel that way, because if you look at like a lot of popular memes out there, if you're into those memes, like a lot of people talk about adulting, like they verbize it. They turn adult into this verb. It's no longer a thing you are; it's a thing you do, and I resonate with that a lot.
Yeah, your friend here too says preach. Yes, I I agree. It is interesting because you do see hashtag adulting all the time. Like you said, when you like cook for yourself, speaking of memes, Patty sent me a meme, I think last week, about like one of the hardest, like as a joke, but kind of also serious, like one of the hardest things to be an adult is like you have to plan meals every day. You're like, what am I going to eat? Like, why is that so stressful and annoying for every single person? As a kid, like food is just sitting there, you don't think about it. But yeah, I think it is sometimes something that you feel like you're doing. Like I felt like when I paid off my school loan, I was like, I'm an adult. Like I felt like that's like an adult thing to do. But I think it goes back to what Lee was saying about this element of responsibility. Like when you take responsibility for yourself and your life and your actions, to me, that's an adult. You're not relying on somebody else. Doesn't mean people don't support you, but you still have to do the work. You still have to do it. To me, that's kind of an element of adult. Sonja, any thoughts here?
Yeah, I think that's funny, and I agree with it. So you can use the word adult as a verb where you're an adulting, or as a noun that you are an adult, or as an adjective where you're describing your actions. So the stages of adulthood, yeah, I did go through stages of adulthood. I was a young adult, and so what constitutes a young adult? The legal age is 18, I think. So legally you're an adult, and you can vote, and you have to pay taxes, and you can drink. Well, no, 21, you got to drink. You can get a loan, you can move out of your parents' house, but in your mind, you might still be childish in a way, a bit immature. And then you go to the next level of adulthood, which is probably what your age is now, Carrie. Mm-hmm. So, and that's, you're more mature, you're probably more responsible. Well, most people, well, some people. And you still, looking at life as though, I've got so much to do, and you're putting things on hold because you're just cruising along. And then you become an older adult, a mature adult, and which I'm at that stage now. And you start to realize that, the clock is ticking. So, I don't have that much time left. I'm going to start doing the things I've always wanted to do. I'm going to travel. I'm going to take dance lessons. Going to get my nails done once a week. Your attitude changes. So yes, I do agree. There are different stages of adulthood.
I mean, yeah, that was beautifully said. I mean, I even feel like in my mid 30s, there's an element of, people that are older than me. So you have so much time. And then I feel like, but do we? Like, then there's like sometimes anxiety or stress around that because there's an element, especially with the pandemic, when people are getting sick and dying in 2 weeks, there's an element of like, okay, like, let me live my life. And then there's an element of like, what does that mean during a pandemic? What does live my life mean right now? You know what I mean? Because maybe I don't feel comfortable traveling, or we can't do social dancing the way we did. And so there's kind of these limitations. Patty, I'm curious because, being again, retired at kind of a different stage of your life, did you ever feel this way? Do you feel this way now? Or are you kind of just like a go with the flow type of person in general?
Well, I'm really loving this conversation, and I think for me, I think at like I said, at a relatively young age, I ended up going into the federal government for work, and it was a wonderful mission career and all of that. But I love to really hear about the experiences where people have taken what I would say was more risks than I took, in terms of their career and their past and trying some different things. To me, I was more comfortable on kind of what I saw as that more, if you want to say secure, kind of steady employment, whatever, and career. So I think different paths work for different people depending on, but I admire the people that really are able to kind of take some of those risks and try something different and go a different path and find their way. I think for me now, having recently retired,
Ben is holding up a sign that says never grow up. It's a trap.
I think there's a good part to that. So that's where I think now, being retired, and again, having, just having the, I would say the fortune to be able to now do some things. Obviously not with the COVID, the things that I want to do, the travel, the visit family and all of that, but still being able to, as Sonja said, to really look at the things that I was never able to do for a lot of reasons in, say, my 30s and 40s, that now I feel like, okay, I'm trying this and I'm trying that. And one of them is dancing. And when we all get back, it's going to be a lot more traveling.
I know it's going to be like a rush of everybody. Go way up. Definitely. We have Francesca saying, when you're an older adult, you reach a point at which you don't care about the expectations others have for you and become free. Yes, I would agree with that. I think as I get older, I care less and less what other people think. I think when we're younger, it's so funny because I've been doing some work with Gen Zers, and I don't know how much of you guys watch TikTok or talk to them, but I have a side part right now. Side parts are out, middle parts are in, skinny jeans are out, mom jeans are in, whatever. Like, I just don't care. And there are some people in their 30s and 40s that are like, oh, I have to do the young thing. And it's just like, so I asked a Gen Zer who was like 18, I said, what's the deal here? Like, who decides this? She's like, well, one person does. I said, well, who is it? Who is this one person? And she's like, usually it's someone famous or like attractive or well-known. And then everybody just follows it and it becomes like a thing. And like, as you get older, you just do not care about any of that stuff. I used to work with the 65 to 90-year-old population when I worked at a JCC years ago. People in their 80s do not care. It's like herding kindergartners. They will say whatever they want. And sometimes inappropriate, but also there is a sense of freedom. And I think that's really, really nice to see and to feel. Lee, any thoughts?
Yeah, it's funny. It's one of the things I've said to some of my older friends, that as I get older, my filter gets less. So I just kind of say things I probably wouldn't have said, 5-10 years ago, especially at work, which may not be the best thing sometimes, but I do feel that I care less about what other people think and more about, what's true to me, So I feel like dancing in the supermarket, and somebody comes down my aisle, my kids will be embarrassed, but I don't care, because they put a good song on and I feel like dancing. So I really don't care.
I always say it's good to hang out with young kids and older people because both spectrums do not care. And it just reminds me of being weird. And I've missed teaching kids this past year because of COVID, but I love that 8 to 10-year-old age group, I always say, because they're very just so much themselves. And they're weird and they're crazy, and I can be that way with them. And it's just so much fun to just let go, because I think we need to be that way. We get too serious. Ben, what are your thoughts? You held up that sign earlier. So do you feel like you're caring less what people think as you get older?
I don't think anyone should care what people think. I mean, but usually people do because they haven't put enough thought into who they are. And so if you don't know who you are, it's a lot easier to be influenced by what other people think of you. I think how we define adult or adulting is kind of scary, because if we see being adult as something that's tedious and boring and not been something we have to do, then we're not going to enjoy the benefits of being an adult has to offer. I want to be a kid, all the time. I don't even like defining myself as an adult because, again, it has that negative connotation. But what everyone was saying earlier about responsibility, I think maybe I was just lucky in how I grew up. I've been pretty independent, self-sustaining. I always had multiple streams of income just because I would work as much as hard as I needed to have that first, that safety net for myself, that not that comfortable safety net, but that safety net to be able to walk in and say, I don't need this, and leave. And so I think I haven't really defined that as being an adult. I more so define it as I have to be professional in this scene, but then I can be myself maybe a little bit more as I think more so that I need to be this role in this scene has changed as I've gotten older. Less of this, I'm becoming more of an adult, or I don't care what people think of me.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, we do kind of adjust, not that we're different people, but different ways that we act. Obviously how we act at work is going to be different than just hanging out with friends at dinner. There is a different level, I guess you could say, of professionalism. So that definitely makes sense as well. Secretly,
I just have to say secretly, I just want to be able to fly because I've watched Peter Pan a few times.
That's always been my dream too.
If I stay a kid, right, I will eventually fly. So I'm trying that out.
We got Batgirl, Peter Pan. Well, so we were talking about earlier. So you said Batgirl and Peter Pan. But so when I was a kid, my ideal thing was to be a backup dancer for Janet Jackson. And I was like, I'm doing that. I was obsessed with her. I was obsessed with hip hop dance. That did not happen. But I did teach myself her choreography to Rhythm Nation, and I taught it to my students. So I kind of felt like I was in her video, but that was my adult dream as a kid. I thought that would be super cool. Did anyone have anything else crazy like that or no?
I already told you mine.
I know. We got Batgirl, Peter Pan. Come on.
I just want to see you do the dance now. I want you to.
I'll send you the video. I don't remember the whole thing off the top of my head, but I watched the video. This is, oh my God, this is so old school. So this was back in 2012. I would have in my apartment, I would have my computer, and then I would take a mirror and put it up against my computer so it would reverse the image, and I would teach myself that way. And then I would teach my students. So it would match the video, when we did it, and we would put it next to each other. Very dedicated. But it felt like I was part of it. I don't know. Ramona, did you take any of those classes with me, or no? Were you gone by that point when I did the music video stuff? Oh, you're on mute. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I already left by that time. I'm kind of jealous now, though. That sounds awesome. But wait, are you sending us a video of Janet Jackson doing the dance, or are you doing the dance?
No, me doing it. I'll show you the one that I did. We did Britney Spears as well.
I hope you send it to all the listeners too.
Okay, I'll add it in the show notes. I will. So the other piece we talked about as an adult, we're talking about career. We talk about kind of family, kind of confidence as well. I think one of the other things that is not talked about enough, it's not even just adult. I think it's just as people. We're always talking about what I have, what are the things I have, or the people I have, or the job I have. But there's so much about mental and emotional and social health that I think is not talked about. Nobody taught you that really in school. Maybe you've gone to therapy as a kid, maybe you went later. Any thoughts on how mental, emotional, social health has changed for you as an adult? Lee, I'll start with you.
Ooh, that's a tough one. You mean in terms of like how I manage things or manage? I'm not really sure where you're going with.
Yeah, how you manage it, or like, had you thought about it as a kid, or is it an important part of your day in general?
Yeah, I can't say that I necessarily thought about that. I think it goes back to, confidence and having good support. And, one thing I always say, you have to always have a good network of people to, I think, bounce things off of and, talk to and manage things, because, it's all a journey. And if you're by yourself, it's a tougher journey, so I think that's what I've always, felt, that I've been able to have enough people to reach out to kind of help you along the way to figure things out, because it is hard to figure everything out on your own. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Queenie is here as well. Queenie has been on the show. She also has an awesome podcast herself, so you should check her show out as well. Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, like, so for me, one of the things that I do quite often is I journal a lot. I spend a lot of time alone getting to know myself. And I mean, I'm the oldest kid of 3 by 7 years. So I guess in some ways I always had alone time, like growing up. So maybe that's why I do it more. But I just always make time. A lot of times it's outside or in my car, and I would just take a journal and just like either just what's going on in my head, or what are the things I want to accomplish, or what are the things I want to do, or how am I feeling? And it's just been something that I've done for like my mental and emotional health, to really connect to myself, because sometimes I feel like we're always go, go, go. We're always doing something, we're always doing for others, but taking that time to just really get to know like who I am and what I want and what I need and get clear, I have found has been really helpful and has been a huge part of kind of who I am as a person. But I've definitely been doing a lot more as an adult as I've gotten older. So for me, that's been a big thing. Sonja, do you have anything that you do, or any thoughts on this at all?
It's very stressful being an adult. There's a lot of stress you've got to deal with as an adult, just with, everyday living, and especially now with the pandemic and quarantining and feeling isolated. I live alone, and I do spend a lot of time alone. And like you, I find that I self-analyze a lot, or I'll call on friends to talk about things. I've never done therapy, but I think just chatting with my friends is therapeutic for me. Just getting my thoughts out, or just venting about something that's bothering me, so that's how I deal with it.
Yeah. Ben, any thoughts on this? Oh, had a little bit of a coughing attack. Go ahead, Ben.
I think about being a kid. I don't even remember, like how to managing emotions, or this idea of I need to manage my emotions. And so I think more so as I've gotten older, it's, becoming more aware of my emotions and becoming more aware of the off days and the on days. So yeah, I have a variety of strategies that I use for myself, but I always reflect on what it's going to be like when I'm older, and the moments that my parents actually open up on the phone with me and talk about how hard it is right now because of COVID, and I can only imagine the evolutions of my emotions and worries and concerns and joys, or how they're going to change as I get older. I do have to point out that as I was thinking about my past, like there are moments of reflection and regret, not really regret, but kind of like, what's that word when you reflect on some, I can't think of the word right now. You reflect on something and you're like thinking about it and you're kind of like longing. There's a specific word for that I can't think of right now. But sometimes you have these moments, but to anyone that's listening that is wondering like, and maybe they're going through a tough time right now, in 5 or 10 years, you're probably not going to remember it, or it's not going to be a very big deal in your life. So I think that's something that's kind of neat. As you get older, you learn more and more about how, we may worry about things now, but we probably won't worry about them in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Always thinking about, will this be something I care about years from now? It's a very good point. Ramona, do you have any thoughts on this? And wondering if you know the word that he's talking about.
Is it melancholy? What is melancholy?
That's a good word. I like that. That works.
Hell yeah. Geez, yeah, mental health. Mental health is great. I'm starting to get some of it now, and I'm really enjoying it. A lot of us spend our childhood and our 20s just kind of collecting little traumas that we can then later on try and foster some mental health to get rid of. Right now, I do a lot of that through my communities that I'm in. I spend a lot of time. There probably isn't a day that goes by right now that I don't have some type of contact. Unfortunately, not physical contact, but some type of contact with friends. As you mentioned earlier, I'm going through a transition right now, and there are a lot of people who I'm very close to that are either going through some type of gender-related transition or already have. And I'm incredibly thankful of them. I actually feel a little too privileged sometimes, and a little guilty of my privilege. And there's nothing more adult than just feeling guilty about things that you have, like y'all were talking about earlier. But yeah, I'm incredibly lucky to have the connections that I do in my life. Some of them have posted on this podcast already, and I'm really happy to have seen them. So yeah, for me, that's how I maintain my mental health is through connecting and being part of community.
Yeah, I love that. And I know, even though we haven't been able to physically see people through the pandemic, I think Ramona, you and I talk weekly, if not sometimes twice a week, of just Sonja, same thing, I'm talking to people so much more on the phone than I was before. And I love that. Like in some ways I'm creating deeper connections because you're really getting vulnerable and getting to know people. And that is a huge part of it. I really like that. It's funny because sometimes I talk to my parents and I feel like I'll tell them stuff and they're like, you're overthinking. Why are you getting worried about this? Let it go. Do you think, Sonja or Patty, that as you get older, like it just doesn't, and Lee too, like it just doesn't bother you as much? Or are there things that maybe you just don't let on to other people?
You want me to take this? I think as you get older, you just learn that, you've already done that. You've already wasted so much time worrying about things that didn't, now at this point don't matter or didn't matter. So why waste that energy?
Well, I think we still have, I know I still have that voice in my head that overthinks and overanalyzes and overworries. It's just being able to kind of change your thought pattern and push them out and recognizing that you're overthinking and overworrying and,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and I think, back to stress relievers is just finding things that you enjoy doing. And that's a good way to kind of help alleviate a lot of the worries, whether it's journaling or, I've picked up painting and drawing or singing or whatever it is, just trying to find something. So when you're in that moment or doing those things that, you forget about all those worries and other things and, find some joy.
Yes, Patty?
I would say the same. I probably am just one. I've always been one of those worriers, or now I use the word fret, that I just fret about things. Whatever it is, kind of thing. And I know in my mind that, I forget it. With Mark Twain, I won't get his saying right, but it's like the notion that there's so many things that I have worried about and thought about, and majority of them never even happened. It's just, but it's recognizing that, just trying to, particularly in this environment in the pandemic. So, going to Ramona's point, the nature of connections and friendships and community out there, to me, has been most valuable. My family for sure, but even beyond family, and even if I'm not seeing them physically, just that. Those phone calls, those texts, those connections of just you know, just finding those folks that perhaps even think like me, and then we worry or fret or have our wine together. Our favorite parties.
I like that. I just want to finish up here, and as we're kind of talking, I want you each to think of one word that you would use to describe what it means to be an adult. I know I didn't prep you for this, but if you had to use one word, what would it be? Sonja, do you have one?
Yeah, but it's a cliche. Responsible.
Mm-hmm. Lee?
Freedom.
Ben?
Play.
Oh, Patty?
Well, Lee kind of took mine.
See, we think we like Patty.
So what's yours?
So I'm going to say curiosity.
Ramona?
Toilet paper.
Mine is going to be accountability. But I think, hopefully those of you listening and watching today or later on, being an adult is so many things. It's really about how you create it for yourself, and to hear all six of us have similarities and also kind of different things. And it's nice to hear for those that have been through more in life, we don't need to worry about so many of the things. But I thank you all for being here so much. Ben, do you want to share if people want to connect with you or speak with you at all? Where's the best place to do that?
Yeah, check me out on LinkedIn. It's Dr. Benjamin Ritter. I think I'm the only one out there. And you can go to liveforyourselfconsulting.com to see all the stuff that I do.
Excellent. Ramona, do you want to share any place for people to connect with you?
I don't know. I don't know the names of any of my social medias. I'm sure.
You don't have to. We always ask if you want to. Lee, Sonja, and Patty don't like to give some of their stuff out, but I know Ben has a website. That's why I said that. So
Tell you what, if you can find me, you've earned it. Friend, if you can find me and send me a friend request, I will accept it and friend you back.
I love it. And as always, if you are listening or watching, I am happy to connect or answer any questions for you. But I thank you all for being here. For those of you watching and commenting, we greatly appreciate it. And I look forward to chatting with you all again soon. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Bye.
Bye.